Hello and welcome everyone to the first installment of the iGrafx Executive Webinar Series, Enabling Business Innovation and Transformation. My name is Gretchen Berthet, VP of Marketing and Product Management at iGrafx, and I'm really pleased to host today's event. I am joined by my colleague Mark Stanford, Senior Director of Program Management, and our good friend and mentor Mark von Rosing, the founder of Lead Frameworks. Today's excellent session, hi Mark. Today's session is going to be recorded, and you'll receive links to the video later today to share with your colleagues that aren't able to join us live. We are going to be addressing your questions at the end of the presentation, so please just enter them in the GoToWebinar questions pane as they occur to you, and we'll tackle those at the end. So let's begin. As I mentioned, today's session is the first in an executive webinar series hosted by iGrafx. And this session is going to differ from some of our more product-centric webinars that some of you might have seen in the past. This series is going to present concepts that are meant to enhance your way of thinking about how your organization performs and what you can do to improve business outcomes. Today's webinar in particular is going to set the stage for the rest of our series by exploring the fundamentals of business innovation and business transformation, by presenting research findings of what successful organizations do to stay on top, when it's best to innovate and when it's better to standardize, and finally we'll dive into a concrete example you should all relate to that highlights the benefits of business modeling to support transformation and innovation. So allow me just to take a minute to properly introduce Mark von Rosing to those of you who don't know him. We really have a treat to get to sit back today and listen to the world's leading expert on business modeling and transformation share his results of research and just a slice of his knowledge. He's the founder of Lead Framework, which is now easily the fastest growing framework group in terms of both overall adoption and the growth of certified practitioners. Mark was also involved in the development of TOGAF and other frameworks which led to the evolution and development of LEAD. An academic presence, Mark leads the Global University Alliance BPM and EA curriculum. He's a partner to major BPM vendors that have adopted LEAD modeling practices. And he's been especially involved in the development of SAP's various business architecture and BPM frameworks as well as their internal LEAD certification. He's the author of numerous publications on business model management, business value management, business process management, including the SAP press publication, Applying Real-World BPM in an SAP Environment. So, with all that, thank you very much, Mark, for joining us in today's webinar.
Thank you. Very kind words.
Okay, you should get control here.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, as every one of you heard, this will be a very challenging web session that we took and the subject that we took up. We want to talk about when to standardize, when to optimize, when to innovate, when do you apply effectiveness, efficiency principles, and when do you transform. Obviously, this is a subject every one of us tackles day by day and actually challenges a lot around it, both in terms of enterprise modeling principles and enterprise architecture. So the idea that we wanted to do is to first to go through a way of thinking that kind of sets the scene, and then a way of how to work with it, and then we end up in the way of modeling. So we try to go literally from alpha to omega on the subject. Therefore, obviously, it will be short on some of the aspects that we show, but we are willing afterwards to have the question and answers. In this perspective, we will actually show a case in the very end. It is a real-life cases that we have worked on, but we have generalized, and therefore it is a made-up fictional case that we are showing in that perspective, but coming from real-life examples where we have done the principles and tested it and piloted it and talked with those of leading and best practice. So having said that, let's jump to it. The first thing I want to look at is market changes over time. So what is it that leads to transformation and innovation fundamentally? Some of those aspects obviously are the changes. In this, the first slide we will look at is actually inspired by Johnston and Scholes, the writers on exploring corporate strategy, and Niels Bohr, who is a Danish physicist. He was the right hand of Albert Einstein, and he talked a lot about changes and the paradox that happens. So on the left side we see market changes, where they are low or high, and on the right over time. So if the change in the environment is small, most organizations, they apply principles in terms of innovation and transformation in an organization. They apply continuous improvement ideas, concepts. These are typically Kaizen principles, just-in-time principles, TQM, meaning total quality management, lean principles, Six Sigma, and lots of others who go in the ideas of continuous improvement, and where you adapt to changes in productions, changes in the operating model, changes in the services. However, if the changes in the market are stronger, and when I'm talking changes in the market, it can be economic changes, it can be other outside forces like your competitors come out with a new product. So let's say, for example, the mobile market. Nokia was the #1 leader. What was the major change that happened there? Samsung came out with new products and Apple came out with new products. They literally, the smartphones hit Nokia in many aspects out of the market. So it was stronger changes than only the normal adoption rate of their product innovation or product adoption. In this case, significant change, meaning in this case transformation, has to apply. The existing things as they are not good enough. I cannot adopt it anymore. I have to significantly change of what I have. If, however, the market changes are very large, meaning the outside forces impact, and that can be competitive forces, complementers, revivals, that can be economy from the outside, or it can be changing technology. That can be lots of different aspects. If the changes are so big, then normal continuous improvement or significant change is not enough. It needs fundamental change. What we have found out, most organizations wait so long until they do this fundamental change that their initiatives of transformation and adoption and innovation are so huge that they actually can hardly limp behind what they should be doing. Let's take a look here on the OECD study you are seeing below here of the chart right now. The OECD, which is the World Organization of Economic Development, projection speaks for itself. Due to the lack of adoption to change, they say that 55% of the current Fortune 500 organizations will not be a part of the Fortune 500 in 2025. This is huge. By the way, I remember the first time that I saw this, and having an economic background and teaching at the university, both on economics, not only on enterprise architecture and BPM, but in economics, I said, this cannot be true. But it is proven actually that the last 25 years, those who were top 500 Fortune companies, less than 50% are still Fortune 500. And that was due to the lack of adoption as well. Because they have the power, they have the size, they have the money, and they actually have the market position. They should have stayed on top. They have what is called a blue ocean. So why did they lose it? Well, they didn't adapt. So that was the first point we wanted to bring. We, however, want to bring some of the others. If we are taking a look here at additional studies, the IBM Global CEO study concludes that 86% of executives say innovation is extremely or very important to their company's growth strategy. However, only 19% feel that they succeed with any of these aspects. One could ask themselves, why is this? Because instead of just mumbling on today and talking about transformation and innovation and what it is, because that we will do as well, is we need to find out what is it that makes that so many organizations have difficulties in applying these principles. It doesn't matter who we are talking to, they feel they are all left up to their own doing the same thing. McKinsey came with a very interesting aspect. Kind of the same principles that the IBM study concluded. McKinsey's study on transformation identified that 72% of transformation programs fail to deliver the actual targets, resulting in a substantial economic productivity loss of $3 billion. One has to understand that corresponds to 4.7% of global GDP. If we could succeed in better handling transformation, this is a very interesting idea. We could actually solve world hunger, because 4.7%, that's all it takes to solve that of world GDP. Anyway, just an interesting side thought. So, I see that these numbers go quietly good in hand. The IBM study, the OECD study, and the McKinsey, for me, they don't say different aspects. They literally point out there is a challenge. A lot don't succeed with it. McKinsey says 72% fail. IBM studies say 19% only feel that they succeed. Well, it's kind of the opposite story, but it goes to the same direction. One of the things that we did in our leading practice at the Global University Alliance, we studied about 2,000 companies with 1,765 CEOs and close to 3,000 business leaders, presenting all major countries and industries. We asked them what was their obstacle to their innovation and transformation initiatives in their organizations. What hit us surprisingly was actually the first response. They actually feel that those executives running the programs, they feel that those people who are executing it, they lack understanding of the difference between innovation and transformation and the principles behind it. So that's actually one of the first things we will take up after this slide. Second most mentioned thing, and by the way, these are multiple percentage possibilities as you are seeing. So in the case if somebody sits with a calculator and tries to add up to 100%, it's a multi-percentage answer. Second most stated was they don't know where to start. Therefore, that will be one of the second things we will tackle in this presentation. Then the lack of skills internally to actually do anything of those. We will tackle that in that we actually want to show how you go about it, how to do it, so that the people who do work with the day-to-day modeling of process models, application models, and other aspects of service renewal could be using these principles to execute some of these programs they're working with. Next aspect was lack of management bandwidth. So they had competing priorities, where one had to do that, another do that. So in the end of the day, they didn't get it done. Next one was existing culture does not encourage sharing information. So that was pure organizational boundary problems. Then lack of executive sponsorship. And then concerns in the projects, which is a part of the top. Perceived costs outweighed projected benefits. And we all know at a certain time of the project, the cost The first 80–90% is all about the cost of doing the project, and the value first comes in the very end. Many executives don't know that and give up just in the end because they say, we cannot proceed like this, therefore we will stop what we are doing. Very interesting aspect. They just before the end of where they could possibly receive value, they are stopping. Second of all, what we see one of the problems within here is they don't do a value audit on their way. Meaning checking of what they do, will it actually give that output what they projected? Yes, believe it or not, we literally found out. We had nearly no company doing this. And the last one, they had no case for change. Well, that was really a shame. That was a bummer. So they did want to change, but actually didn't have a case how they changed and what they wanted to change and how the value would get from that. Which is kind of like, I hate to state the obvious here, but if you haven't planned for creating any value, the likelihood that you will then create any value in such a project is mathematically nearly impossible. And if you, by incident, create some value, then you definitely can't repeat it because you didn't plan for it. It was actually by incident. I know it sounds very obvious when you say it that way, but surprisingly, that's what we see was the concerns. So let's jump directly into the next phases. I know many of you know this. It's just to make sure that we are on the same page what we are talking about. And since one of the concerns was they did not know the difference between innovation and transformation and did not know the principles behind it, let's just cover the basics. So innovation is the act of creating, introducing something new. It comes from the Latin word innovatus, which is the noun from innovare, stemming from into novus, to renew and to bring about something new and to introduce new. So innovation differs from usual improvements in that innovation refers to the notion of doing something different rather than doing it the same thing better. So it's not optimizing, and then even though you are then doing it in a better way, well, that's not innovation. Even though you might have thought very innovative processes within there or ideas, it's not a total innovation of it because you are actually optimizing the existing. You are doing something better. Transformation, however, is the state of making a change, alter or improve something in appearance or character, usually for the better. So what many people define of innovation is actually more transformation. They make something better, meaning they transform the existing. They make the transformation derives from the Latin transformatio, meaning make a change, to alter or improve something for the better. I hope this said it clear that we truly say innovation, therefore, is introducing something new. Changing something for the better, that's transformation. Can it go hand in hand? Yes, that's what we want to talk about today. Can I make something better while totally introducing in some areas something new, new capabilities, thereby enabling the existing? Yes. As a matter of fact, Mark Stanford will actually show a case how this is done. He will take existing processes, alter them, renew some aspects, make new flows to connecting competencies in the organization, and thereby prove the value and the ROI that comes through this. This is a very interesting case, so I'm looking forward to that. So let's go to the next point. What are some of the other challenges that exist? The most companies have difficulties in the aspect of what they should do, what they want to do, and what they can do. Now, what do you think what most companies actually, where the mistake they jump in? Yes, they actually jump in the zone of the danger zone. This is what they want to do, and therefore they do it. Well, what did they forget in that aspect? They forgot the aspect what they should be doing, because the company's potential of development of their existing competencies is between what they want to do and what they actually should be doing due to the outside changes. Yes, I know it sounds obvious, but actually this is where we are seeing, this is the first gap. Secondly, the areas to position change comes between what a company can do and what they should do, not what they want to do. Because what they want to do, well, that's kind of like, well, if I would let my wife buy the shoes she wants to do, she would have exactly all those shoes she has today, because I have no decision power, but that's another discussion. But then it's only the want to do. It's not a question of, well, honey, we can't do that, or should we really do that, or don't you have similar shoes? I know I'm going to a touchy subject, so let's move on. So the primary area of effort around innovation and transformation is a mix between those. What you should do is your change identification. What you want to do is what you should be planning in terms of your performance and value. However, what you can do is your change creation, which you see on the left side. So let's move on a little bit where we go into deeper aspects of this. Right now, I want to share with you, I will pull you up on a high level thinking, because we want to share with you the aspects of what we learned. We did the analysis of these 2,000 companies and their modeling principles. We looked on a 40-year range, and in this aspect, we will look at the stock cycle, meaning the ups and downs of the stock market over the 40 years. Now, why did we look at that? Because we want to see what did the companies do in terms of their transformation and innovation in their growth times or in recession times. Therefore, we are not only looking at the stock cycle, but we are looking at the economic cycle of these companies. So we just compared the economic data of these companies, which obviously follows the stock cycle a little bit behind. So kind of shows that the companies adapt. So let's take a look what the companies did. If we look in the 70s, this was the big oil crisis, worldwide financial crisis. We all know that, still talked about a lot. In this perspective, the biggest, when the recession started, companies started to look at the cost model. Still today, that is the #1 modeling principles used by companies. Every one of us already knows that. Training reduction, cost reduction, operations cost reduction. People get sacked too sadly. Travel gets not allowed, so you need special permission, etc., etc. So everything about cost model. Cost flow is looked, duplication is looked, everything that can cut cost. What we, however, saw as well was the first one to do that was United Airlines. They adopted a new model. They bought buses and offered cheap bus drives to their airplanes in order to get a new market that could not afford to come to them, where then the ticket would get too expensive if they then got a bus drive there as well. So they added their service model. Yes, I know if you think of today, that is a very normal practice. If you go to a gas station is not only a gas station anymore. It has adopted their service model to much more in terms of their revenue model. They deliver bakery, they are a video shop, they are a candy shop. They do from A to Z, they do much more services. So yes, but we need to understand that this is rather new principles. When we look at the 80s, where global recession actually came again. So we again see this is a typical cycle of 6 to 7 years. So after the 75, it took about 6 years, 5 to 6 years, a new recession started. We all know that. This is the session times and cycle times between ups and downs. There's typically 6 to 7 years. Here we are seeing a new aspect came to. Revenue model came in, which I just discussed from a bakery perspective. So adding new service models gives you the new perspective of then having revenue models. So you can apply and give new services, and you can, for example, develop new channels. The one big on this, the one driving this whole thing was actually IBM. IBM developed a channel through partners that none have seen before at that time. IBM's partner network was so big, so they developed a new revenue model, which introduced principles. If we are looking in the 1990s, interesting, however, that between 85 and 90, the first to use in growth times in modeling principles was the service model. In the recession times, they looked at the cost model, then the revenue model, then service model, and as a new thing, the performance model. We need to understand that mid-90s, this was the wave of Michael Hammer. Kaizen principles and just-in-time principles through the 80s and total quality management principles came from Japan in the 80s. They affected the companies such an impact that it changed the way they worked, making it more effective and efficient throughout the entire value chain. Thereby, Michael Hammer came with a whole new principles of business process reengineering. We don't want to give a history lesson, but this is the aspect that today, if Michael Hammer would have lived, I still believe he would have reengineered and rethought the whole way we work with processes. This then applied in growth times as well. This was Michael Hammer's think thought as well. He said, oops, processes should not only be used for optimization, meaning improvements, making it more lean, looking at mistakes, looking at waste within the process. You need to rethink the process as well. If not, you optimize only the existing. So he criticized back then Lean, Six Sigma, and some of Zero Defect, that's not so big anymore, principles, and he came out with what is called business process engineering. This, however, never came as big to the market as business process reengineering due to the fact that actually Michael Hammer never finished it. He died before. So if I always say if he would have lived, we would see that BPM would be used in a different way. But Hammer's thoughts are still there, are very, very vital. Today forgotten by way too many business process experts. They only work in the existing realms. Who says that the process you have is good? They actually take the waste away, they optimize it, they make it more effective, they make it more efficient, not realizing it doesn't matter how much I will optimize this process. It cannot create more value than it creates. So let's move on. We suddenly see in the going up to 2000 that all this was applied, and suddenly the value model came in the 2000s. We all know that that was the dot-com area, but suddenly the principles of value management was there. Strategy maps came up from Kaplan and Norton, and the balanced scorecard, and how to link strategies to your operations and to your operating model and to your revenue model, etc., etc. So it came a whole new wave. Today, value is a normal part of every organization's discussion. As a matter of fact, you cannot start a project without an executive saying what will be the value. How do we create the value? What's your value plan? What's your value case? They literally check the business case for the value case. So let's move on. We are seeing here in the dot-com all of these principles were applied, and in the middle of start of 2000 a new aspect of operating model came about. This is the level of standardization and integration. Lots of different variations on this are on the market, and good methods and concepts. One of them are even an enterprise architecture from Gene Ross, the operating model, where they are talking about how do you integrate more, how do you standardize. So there's lots of good already around there. We see these principles of all of these applying in this current recession. What we, however, see is that these are both applied in growth times and in recession times, but in different ways. So what is it that we learned? Let's take a look here. In terms of modeling your business domains in innovation and transformation, this is what we found out. There is 3 major models that are connected around value model, revenue model, and service model, as well as performance, cost, and operating model. These 6 models are today applied by all companies. We did not meet one who did not do it. However, when we talked with the process experts, process architect, SOA, service architects, the enterprise architects, and other of the communities who modeled, they knew nothing about these principles. So while you don't need to tell a CEO about the revenue model or a CMO, he knows everything around that. You don't need to tell a CMO about his service model or value model. They know everything about that. You don't need to tell anything to a CFO around the cost model. That's his world. And a COO, his world is operating model and a performance model. So these are not new principles. They exist in all organizations. What we, however, did find out was that around the top 3 models, the most of the principles applied there is innovation principles. Now that does not mean you cannot innovate your operating model. Obviously, like I said, it's the most principles used. And when we are talking making it better, the existing, it was more applied to operating model, cost model, and performance model. Therefore, thinking new is on the top 3 models. Making it more effective and efficient and optimizing the existing, making it better, was on the bottom 3. We felt this was important to share because we will literally show how we apply this in practice. So we split this into outperformers versus underperformers. These 2,000 companies and these principles we just learned. Therefore, on the left side, I want to introduce a new slide of that we want to look at. On the left side, we will look at the adoption rate of the companies doing it. On the top, you see outperformers. Then we split them into performers, followers, and underperformers, also called in management principles leapfrogs, or just, yeah, they are literally in a red ocean, have difficulty to survive. They have their fight. So obviously we found out there is less outperformers, there is more performers, there is a lot followers, and really a lot of underperformers. That supports the idea of, for those of you who know a little bit of management principles, of blue ocean. The outperformers and performers are more in the blue ocean, while the followers and underperformers are what is called in a red ocean. They fight for the bait that is there, hence it's called a red ocean. So let's look at it in terms of leading practice, industry best practice, and best practice. We found out that it is the outperformers where we learn the leading practice from. It is the performers and followers that apply industry best practice because they must compete head to head. And it's the best practice, well, that's the underperformers, meaning everybody does it. I want to share something here of a difference of this. And I mean, this is in all areas. This is a slide of some of these findings. This is a point system where performance-based, a value of 1.0 represents underperformers and 10 represents outperformers. So you would here see that the blue are companies using leading practices, meaning they apply the slide we had before. They apply principles of competition. And they both do that. We tested it in social media, in their supply operations, in their interaction centers, meaning service and call centers. This is something, the example we will have today on. Then their service and product innovation, or their enterprise analytics, meaning information reporting. We did the test and much, much more. This is just to show you a view. This is not in only one area. They literally apply different principles. So let's take a look at what did they get out from applying different principles. Well, contrary to what the most vendors will tell you, they will tell you implement our best practice and you will get a strategic advantage. I am sorry to say, and excuse my French, that is baloney. It is absolutely, I will not say the words, but this is not right. Applying what everybody else applies cannot give you a differentiation because everybody else already does it. If it's already best practice, meaning this is what the others do, well, it will give you a competitive parity, meaning at least as good as the others. Which, by the way, you need to be. If not, you are actually outcompeted. You are out of business. So, is applying best practice good? Yes. Are we preaching against best practice? No. You should always start with best practice and then tailor them to your own needs, because there are certain of your areas where you need to have better than the best practice what everybody else does. You need to compete in your industry-specific best practices. And in others, you cannot apply neither of them. You need to have your own practice or learn from the leading practice of others, which will give you a strategic advantage in the area. When we mapped the models to this, the 6 models we just learned before, this is how it looked. The value model was more applied, and the service model was more applied by the outperformers. The performers applied revenue model and service model. The followers applied cost model and performance model and operating model, while the underperformers mostly looked at their operating model, meaning squeezing the last drop out of what they could from what they have. And they apply principles of performance model, but not in a professional, very good manner. If you see yourself on this and you would say you are in the bottom, well, I have good news. You can apply the principles of the rest. We will talk how. Here's furthermore something that we actually saw. Up here, applying these principles, this is more about competitiveness. Applying these principles down here is more about differentiation. Hence, most likely, this is why there is more innovation around this and more transformation around that. That's at least what we saw, even though, like I said, both innovation and transformation applies to all of these models. So let's go a little bit more into detail. We want to look at the outperformers and the underperformers and the difference. On the left side, you see the underperformers. They looked mostly at cost model, then operating model, then performance model, then less on their revenue model, on their value model, and least on their service model. At least they still did some service renewal. However, if you are looking at the outperformers, it's exactly the opposite way around. They looked more at their value model, then their service model and their revenue model, and then cost model, performance model, and operating model. We will take some of these findings later on and how to apply it. This does not mean that this is how you have to do it. Obviously, the outperformers are in a space where they both have the money and they have the space and they have the products to do this, to innovate. We still, however, say both outperformers and underperformers applied all 6 of the modeling principles. So it gets time that whatever we model, that we start thinking on this. So let's go to this. We're going to some of the last slides here on me, and then we are coming to the real-life example. This is what we can do. These are the findings around it. If we take a view from the business and on the very right, the technology view, what do we learn from these business models, domains? The companies who apply the revenue model and the value model, this is typically around the core differentiating aspects, meaning their competencies that they have. The goal is competitive advantage. The focus is on innovation and efficiency. In terms of technology standards, they are looking for those aspects that make them differentiated. They have to apply leading practice. They invest to differentiate, and they diversify between the business units. They do not standardize across the way. So many EA principles literally have no modeling aspects literally to capture these unique aspects, because they don't even know which artifacts are value creating and which are actually value drivers or performance drivers. By the way, the same is for process people. Until now, which actually Mark will show you, there was no approach how to identify if the value of the process is the value driver or performance driver, if this process creates value or not. All you could do is say, is it a core process or not? But a core process does not create more value than a supporting process. That is wrong doctrine. You could have a core process that does not create value, and you can have core processes that do create value. So, and then there is aspects of service model and performance model. What are these principles? Here it's about competitive aspects, meaning head-to-head, at least as good as others. This is not competitive advantage. Please note that's the top. Differentiation is competitive advantage. So core competitive means head-to-head bumping, where you are competing directly. So the goal is competitive parity, at least as good as the others. The focus is on efficiency and effectiveness. Here you apply industry best practice, you invest in industry standards, and you replicate across the business units these industry standards. Here is important. If I'm implementing normal best practice in an area where I need to compete, I actually destroy my competitiveness. If I'm implementing best practice in an area where I am unique and I create value, what happens there? I actually destroy value. So I am sorry to say that I believe most SAP implementations, most Oracle implementations, most PeopleSoft implementation, and most many others, if you apply the best practice without rethinking where to apply it, if you do what the vendor says, you have high likelihood to destroy more value than you will create. You will reduce the cost because you will increase the level of automation, but you will not have more ROI. And by the way, that's what the last 20 years studies around ERP solutions have proven. Reduced cost, but not increased ROI. So, what we are talking today is truly up to date. So if you want to look at your cost model, operating model, the principles, well, there you don't differentiate. The goal is to meet market standard. You only focus on effectiveness and efficiency. There makes no difference. The whole idea is out-of-the-box functionality. Differentiation adds no value. If you sit and you actually sit and do composite applications in an area you don't compete, you increase the cost, but you don't increase the value. You have a problem. Higher TCO, lower ROI. If you sit and actually do programs and you do your own tailoring of the systems in an area where differentiation makes no sense, you increase the cost without increasing the value. You again get higher TCO, lower ROI. Most ERP implementations and all other enterprise application implementations and information management and business intelligence projects should consider these principles as a guiding way of thinking and a guiding way of working. That's mostly what is missing. They apply the right way of modeling, but not the right way of thinking and not the right way of working. So, obviously the top is more about value aspects and the bottom is more about cost. If you would see where these are applied, no, you don't apply differentiation to all aspects. In typical companies, this should be the mix. 80% of all your operations should be applied best practice. Don't tailor your systems. Don't sit and program lots on it. It should apply out of the box. Well, if the user does not like it, well, get the user to adapt to it. It's about replicating standardization and making sure everybody does it the same way. You need to tailor and make it specific 15% of your organization. And 5%, you need to apply leading practices. You cannot look for your vendors for that. Definitely don't listen to their consultants. They will tell you lots of great stories. But when you implement best practice or industry best practice in an area where you are unique or need to be unique, you will actually destroy value, which actually often happens. So, having said that, we will now jump. We are leaving the practical. We believe we have now covered the way of thinking and the way of working. We now want to go into a little bit way of modeling. So we are jumping into a financial bank example. This was a real-life example that we have generalized, so now it's a scenario. We are applying the 6 modeling principles in the bottom, so you see revenue model, value model, service, cost model, performance model, and operating model. And if we are looking at this bank, what it could improve, and on the top you see its operating areas, meaning the business areas. And then all the business groups and the business competency groups within here. We sorted it by strategic, tactical, and operational due to the fact of easier to work with it. So, let's take a look here. If we apply the principles, you could see that in all of the different areas, you could both have operations, performance, cost, service, value, and revenue model aspects and applying. In this scenario, and very typical for banking, the service centers, the interaction center, meaning the call centers, had a lot of improvements. Why? A lot of users go more and more to the web, go to mobile devices, so they expect better service when they call in. We will now zoom into the call center and we will take a look, we will take a more granular look, meaning more detailed view of a call center. So let's take a look here. So this is the call center business model of this bank. So again, you see on the top the main business areas of the call center. And then you see the different groups and business competencies of the call center. Then we applied the same principles in order to get a more modeling perspective. What is it we needed to improve? So you see we have integration opportunities around issue management. We have TCO opportunities around the market. We have definitely a cost opportunity around the solution and service delivery. And we have value opportunities around operational planning. So you see there's lots of opportunities here to improve the operations, which I know every one of you has similar stories. In order for us to right now model this, obviously we need to go in much more detailed view. So we will take a view to the activities. I have listed here the main activities of those competencies that we saw. So that's the processes. The call start, they automate greetings, they know extensions, so then the call enters, the issue gets solved. So these are the main processes of this. So for this, I'm going to hand over, because Mark Stanford will, from iGrafx, will show us in iGrafx live how this is done and how some of these areas can be improved.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'm excited to join this presentation because I've seen these models and methods applied at a large organization. I recently took part in several days of lead training at the Government of Canada Human Resources and Skills Development Department. And it was great to watch an $87 billion department in action. And all levels of employees were involved, but all the attendees were engaged. They were challenged and focused on improving their organization. And best of all, they were having fun while using iGrafx. So you could really feel their excitement while you're in the room with them. Now, I can't show the Canadian government's processes, but I will show an example of value creation using a fictional financial institution named Global Corp Bank. The bank is getting excessive complaints from call center customers. This reduces customer satisfaction, which lowers customer loyalty and damages the brand. Therefore, complaints are having an impact on organization strategy and success. The bank has researched call center best practices and decided to build on those and apply their own leading practices to reduce complaints and improve customer satisfaction. This will be accomplished by improving the call center in two phases. The first phase enhances the call center processes to identify those leading practices that are crucial to the second phase, implementing changes that make the call center more efficient and more effective. Here's the existing call center process flow. Of course, the swim lanes represent departments and shapes represent activities being performed. Connection lines show the flow through the process. But if you look at this in more detail, you notice that the current process does not include the necessary activities to provide the operational information to understand how agents perform their work and what actions are correlated with fewer complaints. This knowledge gap is visible by mapping those call center activities to the call center business model that Mark von Rosen showed earlier. The process flow activity shapes are overlaid onto the business model to understand the competencies currently covered. Notice that only a few competencies are addressed, again shown in the center column here, and the bank is not satisfied with this business workflow and want to change their processes to identify the leading practices and facilitate new business opportunities. The improvement should promote new business capabilities within their existing business competencies, thereby extending the cross workflow and adding value to new capabilities and processes. So, the bank took on this challenge, and recall that phase one is to improve the process to capture that operational information. They used iGrafx to model the planned changes. New strategic activities are added, those are shown in a different shade here, to provide the necessary information so that later transformation and innovation projects could be performed. For example, new reporting activities here at shape 6, 12 and 14 were added. New automated service to report on how the customers are reacting to the process. We're not just going to wait for complaints to come in. And data on decision making is gathered where those activities take place. We use the extended BPMN notation to mark these particular activities. The decision table, for example, the reporting task type, automated service task type. All those extended BPMN task type activities can be applied to the model. And in addition, we've also added information and business objects to help in understanding and clarity of the model. These are available on the BPMN shape palette. With this new process designed, it was implemented and the modifications captured additional operational information. We now have new capabilities, and they provide real-time measurements and values that are visible in iGrafx Performance Central, a process monitoring tool. In the past, the only information available was represented by this top line. That was the number of complaints, here shown as a ratio. Well, now after changing the process, we can also look at the complaints from agents who are following leading practices. Again, it's shown as a ratio, and that's crossed here as the bottom line. There was also additional measurements that disclose that the leading practices came from enhanced decision-making by the better trained agents. Those agents resolved issues without needing to escalate to the loan officers nearly as much. So the bank's goal was replicate that ability across all the resources and their activities to get the total ratio of complaints down to the ratio of the leading agents. That additional operational information can now transform this diagram into a model where what-if analysis and simulation can be performed. So we have the information now, so we can specify the duration times on the activities. We can also look at the resources that are required by the activities and analyze the incoming call rate coming into the process. With information like that available in the model, it can be simulated and what-if analysis performed. And that simulation can be done in a trace view where you can actually watch bottlenecks, for example, take place. Or if I want to run a simulation more quickly, I just click the Start button to run the simulation. The statistics from the simulation are compared to the real-life statistics so that we feel comfortable that this is a valid model of the real-life process. And now we can go further and do what-if analysis on this process. So we've completed phase one. We've built an improved model that captures that operational information and allows for additional new capabilities. Now comes phase two. We want to test and adopt those leading practices through process standardization and integration across all the agents. Now, the analysis showed that the changes should improve the call resolution rate from 75%, so the calls that take this path, to 90%. Well, the bank wants to know how much this transformation to leading practice will reduce customer complaints. So I simply changed this scenario attribute in the model from 75 to the new rate of 90% and run the simulation. And that rate is used at this decision point here, the scenario attribute. Before I run the simulation again, I'll change to append the new results to the previous results and then run a simulation. Well, running that analysis shows that the improved process, thereby the business workflow, should reduce complaints by almost 30%. This is one of the benefits of having a tool that allows for different transformation and innovation scenarios and validating them without having to perform expensive real-life experiments. Just another quick example. Perhaps a marketing program is going to change the rate of incoming calls. Instead of between 1 and 2 minutes, they'll come in every minute. We can simulate that scenario as well. That'll have a dramatic effect on complaints unless we do something like adjust our resource allocation. So now if I add more resources and run another simulation, I can see that that brings that back down. So over time, the bank implemented this change, and over time, they again looked at the measurements with Performance Central and saw that the total number of complaints came down to the ratio following leading practices. This process improvement is now better aligned with the business model and wished-for changes. And remember that call center business model? Well, Now we're touching on much more competencies within the model. I've already shown you how we can work with the workload management. We've used IPC to analyze performance management. We've done design and development of the process. And we've been checking the changes, doing value management on the process as well. So that was a real quick glimpse of iGrafx to illustrate the improvements possible when you reconsider what you will do based on the changes you can do and therefore should do. I'll let Mark Van Rosing wrap up now and elaborate on how this example relates to the concepts he introduced earlier.
Thank you very much, Mark Stanford. I think this was a very unique opportunity that we had Mark going through. Let's just very fast recap, because I mean we took a lot through right now. What is it we learned? An organization has existing competencies, meaning that is the things that you are good at. Now, what's the difference between a capability and a competency? A competency has a resource who has an ability, meaning a capability to do something, and that gives the company the competencies they have. In certain areas, they literally need to core differentiate with some of the competencies. All right, so let's look. What did we learn? All enterprise architect principles and process modeling principles is to develop new capabilities for an organization. So we looked at changing some of the processes, meaning activities, and connecting them new. Which abilities did it give? Meaning capabilities for an organization. So it's kind of like in composite applications where you put different application services together to create a new application service. It's the same idea. You take different activities and tasks and put them together in a different way to create new value. That's one thing we learned. Very good. So we could actually see here the connections of these with the competencies and activities. It actually improved certain critical success factors. It improved client satisfaction. It was better to monitor client interaction. It conducted consultations activities better because it was around value management and issue management. And it literally enabled new workflow in the organization. This is so vital. In addition to that, we learned some other important aspects. You could see what is it we do good, what is it we don't do good. Such conceptual and logical thinking needs to be used around a tool. You cannot do it by hand, and definitely not by your head. And an Excel sheet won't capture that idea. So Marky demonstrated how he captured what did the leading people do, meaning what were their own best practice, meaning their leading practices. What was the leading things that the best people did? Top-notch people. This they tried then to replicate to the others, meaning standardizing the performance and the value creation. Very, very good. So we learned a lot. It was taking away duplication of work. It was taking away duplications of services and duplications of tasks in order to join them together. All right, let's take a look here. What was our main discussion points and conclusions for today? Because yes, believe it or not, you have been right now 1 hour and 4 minutes on the call. What's the main conclusions? We are looking at market changes always affect your business model. Therefore, you need to adopt through either innovation and transformation. So innovation and transformation is not a question if you should be doing it, it's how you should be doing it. For this, our main recommendation to you is understand the drivers for change. Both small, medium, and strong drivers. And make sure you literally capture them and know how to handle them. If not, you are already going towards a journey that is a blind journey, which we cannot recommend, not knowing where you go. most likely you will then never get there because you actually never knew where you wanted to go. Or you feel you always got there, which could be a safe haven for some. Then next one, modeling your enterprise is done in 6 domains/areas. Operating, performance, and cost model, as well as service value and revenue model. Companies need to model all areas, but outperformers find differentiation by developing their service value and revenue model. Why? Because that's where, in the very few aspects where you need to differentiate, this is where you apply it. We are not saying you need to do that everywhere. It was just one of the things that many of you who wrote to us beforehand said that's what they wanted to hear. We want to learn from the leading companies. What is it that they do? Well, that's what they do. The only way to innovate or transform is by changing what you do. You cannot innovate by a strategy map. You cannot innovate by a balanced scorecard. You cannot innovate by a business model, which I showed. Very nice tools, but it only helps to kind of map your areas and what you want to do and the major pain points and the issues and the bottlenecks. That's fine and good, but fundamentally you need to change what you do. If not, executives who think they can change it by changing direction of their strategy and that's enough, make a major mistake, because as Albert Einstein says, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different output. So fundamentally, you have to change what you do, and that's your processes. So everything starts and ends with the process change. So therefore, the process way of thinking and the process way of working, which we presented around change, for transformation or innovation, were the following principles: efficiency, effectiveness, and identification of duplication of activities, tasks, services, and even resources are low-hanging fruits. It's a huge potential around operating, performance, and cost model. Do not apply optimization principles to your value model. It's kind of different principles you apply there. You can apply performance as well, you can apply effectiveness, you can apply efficiency, but don't start to apply optimization. So you can create differentiating and core competitive aspects are vital for developing one's service value and revenue model. Therefore you apply different principles. Too sadly, there exists no approach today. It doesn't matter if you are taking TOGAF, if you are taking our beloved Lean, if you are taking our beloved Six Sigma, business process reengineering, and you know I love it. I already mentioned them in these sessions. All these principles do not differentiate between a service, a value, an aspect of performance or cost. This is a challenge. So this is something you need to do. In the way of modeling, this is typically where you use the methods and approaches. Our recommendation is the following. We agree and build on basic BPMN modeling techniques. Therefore, the process way of modeling around change and transformation and innovation is you need to have process models, meaning the logical and conceptual thinking you need to have around these advanced and extended modeling principles that we were talking about. You need to have a process tool who can do that. Many process tools, believe it or not, many BPMN tools do not even differentiate between a manual and automated service. How in the world can you then really model your service model? They don't even have an aspect of a service rule. They just have a process rule. And I'm not here to criticize, I'm here to give inspiration. I'm here to kind of give some of the aspects that you need to rethink and which we will take up in our other sessions. Furthermore, the decomposition and composition of processes and their connected object should be done with the right templates. Do not reinvent this. Build on what exists and ensure they are interconnected. We see too many of these templates that are used, meaning artifacts. Everybody creates them by themselves and they are not integrated, and they don't think of the right way of decomposing the process, meaning breaking it down and connecting it. So that was our recommendations for today. And obviously I don't need to say one of the reasons, because I am not from iGrafx, as Gretchen explained from the very start. I work in a university world and capture leading practices. In this perspective, why did I do this session with iGrafx? Because to their modeling principles, they are one of the few that I even met that have adapted their meta model and modeling principles, and at least from the iGrafx 2013, that can do this, what we talked about today. They do differentiate between all these objects and both manual and automated services and a process rule or a service rule, etc., etc. Anyway, enough about that. I don't want to do the marketing. It's just for those people who then feel, how does this connect? I give over with that to the to Gretchen, who will say what is the next on the webinar, so where the next steps are.
All right, great. Thank you very, very much, Mark and Mark. So now that we've had the overview to set the stage, we're going to be continuing our webinar series over the next coming months by drilling into the business models that we talked about today. We'll start with the domains that most companies see as low-hanging fruit. And probably the easiest place to start. These are the ones that lend themselves to transformative focus. And then we'll work our way up towards the models that help drive innovation and differentiation. So keep your eyes out for an invitation to the next webinar on the docket, which will be Achieving Cost Reduction with Standardization. If you'd like more info from Mark von Rosing, his contact email is here. There's also a leading practice conference coming up in September in the Netherlands. For those of us in the U.S., BPM courses on leading practice principles are available. Just check out the above link, and we'll be sending out these links and contact information via email just in case you don't have time to jot it all down today right now. If you're not already familiar with iGrafx, just a quick word about us. We provide solutions for business process management and analysis to help make the companies that we work with more successful in their quest for process excellence. If you'd like more information on us, just visit our website. There's a wealth of information there. Anyone interested in learning more about the software products that you saw today in our presentation, we're more than happy to give you a custom demonstration tailored to the issues that you have at hand, to you or your team. And we also offer on-site consulting to help you assess the current state of your process program and how to most effectively get your program to the next level of process maturity. So I appreciate everybody sticking with us for the duration. We're well over our hour, but I did promise that we would cover some questions. If you have any that you haven't entered already, now's the time to put them into the questions panel in GoToWebinar. So I will start with a couple that have come in already. The first one is Mark von Rosing. How would I track changes to the process and impact to the business? That's kind of a loaded question. So again, how would I track changes to the process and impacts to the business?
Oh, very good. Very difficult, very good. I can tell somebody is a typical model person there. So yes, one of the most challenging things is you get told by the business to do that, you then execute it, and they said, how in the world, how can you now track the impact and the benefits? In this case, my recommendation is, if you use a simple high-level map that we did and identified the bottleneck, the issues, the challenges, and the expectations on it, which we had on the call center as well and the financial business model. In this case, you can actually track, go back to that, because you then need to detail, and you can do that in Word format or in Excel, or use iGrafx to specify, in this area, I wanted to do this improvement. If you then do it, you link the process changes back the same way that Mark Stanford showed, back to these areas, and then you know what affected them, impacted them. In this case, you can actually both do a root cause analysis and an impact analysis of tracking the improvements. That would be my recommendation, at least in a short answer.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, another question. If one reuses something in a new way to do something that was not envisioned by or done by the existing system, would that be classified as innovation or as transformation? Very good question.
Mark Stanford, do you want to take it? Or I can do if I don't mind.
Either one of you jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Mark. You're the expert on the topic.
Okay, yeah, and if you are doing something new in an existing, it would be innovation. If you are improving already the existing, it would be transformation. So if you are applying lean principles and actually taking waste away and optimizing it, it typically goes to the ideas of transforming something. If you are rethinking the whole thing, meaning using business process engineering principles, well then, and if you apply it to your existing applications, it would still be innovation. And Mark Stanford showed a perfect example of that. He took something existing, applied totally new principles of both new reporting, automated services around the complaint handling, and he replicated the leading practice principles others to apply it, which was there but not applied by others. So, and therefore, it was a very innovative approach which he did, which we actually learned from doing this at customers. So these are real life examples we have done. So hope it answered it in the short way.
Okay. Here's a question for either one of you. I'll let you battle it out again. How do I link the process models to business goals? For instance, if you have business goals like reducing cost.
Well, I'll start on the answer to this. One thing I didn't have time to show is that the complete organization strategy and goal model can be stored within the iGrafx repositories. And then any activities or processes that address those strategies and goals can be linked to them. So you have bi-directional linkage between your strategy model and the processes, and you can see the alignment to those processes.
Okay, I think that covered it. Another one for you, Mark Stanford. Could you explain the extended BPMN notation and how iGrafx supports that a little better?
With the extended BPMN notation, instead of just having available to the process modelers the default set of BPMN notation, iGrafx has extended that, and I showed that very briefly in the demonstration, where you can specify the task type. It can be a reporting task type and the automated service task type. And it's very important in modeling to be able to model both manual service and automated services. And this is possible by using the extended BPMN set. And that extended set also applies to additional artifacts that can be placed on the model to enhance the understanding of the model and improve the clarity. And so those are a set of over a dozen different information and business objects. And then those things will be shown in more detail in follow-up webinars that we'll be doing over this year.
Okay, and another question for you, just kind of piggybacking on the prior question. When you link goals to processes, can this be tied into the simulation to quantify the impact on achieving a goal and so forth? That was a bit of a mouthful.
There's different ways of doing impact analysis with iGrafx, and I think Mark von Rosen has already touched on that. Another way of doing impact analysis with iGrafx is as you build up these relationships between your resources that are supporting your processes and then your processes that are supporting your strategies and goals, you can actually create an automated map of these relationships and see that as you have an impact on a resource at the bottom of the support chain, where that impacts your other resources, processes, goals, etc. And this can be done with the diagrams that are manually created and some diagrams that are automatically created by the iGrafx products.
Okay, and we have some great example scenarios that we're happy to demonstrate to you. So anybody out there that's interested in seeing that in more detail, just let us know and we can set up a custom demo of some of these concepts. Okay.
If I can add something, Gretchen, here.
Of course.
One of the things you can do, actually, when you link your strategies, meaning your strategic business objectives and what is critical for your different departments, your critical success factors, if you link them to your processes, thereby you have not only linked it to your different roles and resources because they are already captured on the process too, you have not only linked it to your data objects and your applications because these are already or should be shown where is an automated task, where do I have an automated service, where do I have reporting. So you link then your strategy and your critical success factors with your reporting as well, which improves your business intelligence projects hundredfolds. That's one of the most difficult things to find out. The whole reporting lines, the whole decision-making lines, and the link to strategies. Secondly, it does a whole nother thing. It gives you the ability to do better value management to the top and better performance management to the bottom because you link it to the measurements, which are on the process as well. In addition to that, if you already said, well, all of this I already thought of, then I have a new one, which I have not seen a company really apply. If you have an advanced tool that can actually do what we just discussed, you could start to do value-driven BPM, value-driven process modeling. Because instead of starting to derive the process based on what you think the scenario should be, you could model it according to the strategies and critical success factors. It changes your modeling principles. This is one of the things which we will discuss when we come to the value model later on in one of the sessions. So look forward to that. I just wanted to hint the idea of we will literally go in very detailed about these modeling principles. Sorry, Gretchen.
No problem. I think that was good clarification. I'm going to have time, I think, for two more questions. First one is about companies that are impacted by government regulations. I'm sure there's a lot of those out there represented by the people that are listening. The question is, have you considered companies that are impacted by government regulation in your company analysis? And if so, how do you innovate, transform, and change when this external force is not changing with you? Yeah, that's a big constraint.
I can actually, from the very many government organizations that we analyzed, yes. As a matter of fact, this means what kind of modeling principles would you have to apply in the notations you are doing. This is not then only about doing the normal tasks and activity symbols and gateways and artifact symbols, meaning of your business information and data objects. It's your activity symbols that needs to be worked on here. And this is what you have: rule sets. You need to make sure that you have rule script too. Then you have flow rule sets, because certain rules apply to certain flows and to certain activities. Yes, in government organizations you will not only have one policies, everything is governed by policies and different rules. So, by the way, for those who ever have, but we cannot do that on this session, you can write me an email for those who are interested in that. I can show you how you map conflicting rule sets to the different processes. What government organizations often don't have, because they work in silos, they don't see where do we have possible bottlenecks in terms of rules. Where do we have possible bottlenecks and duplications of services or functions, where there is an optimization and improvement potential. So yes, this answer goes twofold. what we will be showing encapsulates this idea, and iGrafx could already do that today. So you could have specified different rule sets, different rule scripts, different decision tables to it. You can even do flow rule sets, a rule set that applies to an entire role, or a rule flow. And you can do a service flow, because there is a difference between a process rule and a process flow and a service flow. And then there is a reporting flow, and there is a measurement flow, and how you can apply that. So yes, the new iGrafx 2013, and I'm doing absolutely no marketing for this, I'm getting no paid for this, but that's what you would have to apply within the new extended BPMN modeling notations that are there. And the reasons I know this so detailed is because these are the modeling principles that iGrafx got from the leading practice. They literally looked at all this and added 15 different symbols and icons in order to apply these principles. And that's what we are talking about. So hope it answered it. For those who want more detailed, write me an email.
All right, great. Thanks, Mark. I've got one last question that should be an easy one for Mark Stanford. Does iGrafx support BPMN, collaboration, conversation, and choreography?
Yes, we certainly do.
All right, short and sweet. Good way to end up. All right, thank you everybody for spending this time with us. Got some great feedback. It looks like you enjoyed the session. We'll again thank Mark von Rosing for joining us and giving us an excellent presentation today. Stay tuned for the next webinar in our series, and have a great rest of your day.